Welcome, everybody, to the Manifestation Mindset Show. We are your hosts. I'm Dr. Aaron Garcia.
And I'm Veronica Mendez Garcia, and our show starts at 2 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we just recently changed the time because we figured it's the best time for us.
So, today, we're going to be talking about when we feel like we force things to happen, when things don't seem to go the way we want them to, and we get so frustrated sometimes, but a lot of times it's because we push too hard. We're going to be talking about that today here on the show. The Manifestation Mindset Show, we talk about, the manifestation of the mindset of manifestation, excuse me, I get a little tongue tied, overcoming emotional challenges and developing the mindset for success. And so, if you guys want to join us each week when we go live, make sure that you subscribe to the channel here on YouTube and click that little bell reminder so that you know each time when we go live.
All right. So today's topic is: Are you forcing things to happen?
Hmm.
So, earlier we were talking about the title for the show, and we were almost going to call it "Are you using the force" or
Are you
something?
using the Force? We've been watching Star Wars for for every single day with our daughter, and so we've been on this whole Star Wars craze right now. At least I have been. But when we talk about the Force, it's like we use this. There's an energy, right, in the
Mm-hmm.
whole Star Wars land, and the Force is this energy that is able to be controlled. You can manipulate that just with your thoughts, your mind. But when we're that's kind of like in a way how we create our life too,
Yeah.
because as we are looking to create things, we have goals, we want to accomplish something, maybe we want to attract um, something into our life, you want to create better relationships with other people. We have this energy within all of us that attracts that to us, and we can
Mm-hmm.
create that if we put our mind to it. But what happens a lot is people can try too hard
Yeah.
and try so hard to make things happen. And I know this from personal experience because when you try too hard, you create a lot of frustration. And when you start to do that, it seems like things take much longer to take place.
Yeah, so if you're trying to force things to happen, what will happen is that you get more resistance. And so think about it. Have you ever tried to force someone to do something, like force a child to eat their vegetables when they don't want to, or force a baby to eat something they don't like to, and what do? They spit it out, or they knock it out of your hand, and then what happens? You get frustrated. So it's similar to that. So when we are trying to force things to happen in our own life, and it could be something that maybe you only know about, and it could be maybe working on something, and you're trying to force something, you end up getting more frustrated, like Aaron mentioned,
Hmm.
and things just they don't work out. And if they do work out, it might not be as clean as you expected it to.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like trying to force anything, and either something will break or it'll get destroyed, or things like that. So it's the best thing to do is to allow things to happen. And I'm not saying just sit on your couch and don't do anything. Take action, but don't force things to happen.
Absolutely. I had it popped up here a second ago. I want to say hello to Stephen Smith, who's
Hey,
watching us from
Steven.
Sarasota, Florida. Thank you for watching. And for those of you guys are watching and you're new here to the show, let us know here into the comments. We'd love to hear from you guys. If you have any thoughts, any questions you'd like to ask us during this episode, feel free to put those here into the comments because we love having that interaction with you guys.
Yeah, and also when we force things, it makes us more. I don't know. Our energy becomes like more stress and more like high strung type of energy. But when you relax and you just allow things to happen, do what you need to do, and it's just more calming on our nervous system.
Yeah. The example, I don't know, it pops up into my mind right now, but I'm going to use the analogy. When when I used to wear a lot of suits and ties, because I remember when I was in clinical practice, actually it was more of a student that we our requirement was to wear shirt
Uh,
ties and jackets, and so I was used to wearing a tie every single day. And for gentlemen, if you understand what I'm talking about, sometimes the tie trying to figure out the tie at certain times and in the position, it can get frustrating because if it's not working out the way you want it to. And what I would start to notice is I felt my body getting all tensed up and almost like you're not breathing very well when
you
you're kind
get
of getting
hot.
frustrated. You get really hot, especially when it's hot outside. It's even worse.
Yeah.
And what I noticed is sometimes I would just like stop take a breath, and then when I just calmed my mind, then everything just went so much more smoother. But it seemed like it was more difficult in a tense state of mind. But
That's true.
but I've done this in so many different fashions. But I've noticed that when we do things in a chaotic mindset, or we're trying to force it, it has to happen right now. You're rushing during things. The key thing is we all need to stop and just take a breath sometimes and allow things to happen the way that they are supposed to happen.
Yeah, that breath is key when, when you're feeling that frustration. And this is what we teach our clients is, just take a moment to stop and breathe. Because like when you're tense, if you feel how your body is, like it's tight, you're not breathing fully, it's almost like you're holding your breath
Yeah.
sometimes too. And that's not good. So it's allow yourself to breathe, allow things to happen. And when you think about it, things are going to happen the way they happen.
Hmm.
Things are going to happen the way the universe wants it to happen, and we really have no control over that. So it's just allow it to happen. And if it doesn't happen the way you want it to happen, then maybe it wasn't meant to be that way. And that's how I look at it. Well, maybe we weren't supposed to go here, or maybe,
Hmm.
this is what is supposed to happen.
Yeah, and like what lessons are we supposed to learn in those moments? And it's funny when we come across these situations. And we're human. We go through these things too. That's why we talk about them, because we go through these experiences ourselves. And I just noticed, like, wow, this has been a blessing. What
Mm-hmm.
good is coming from this? In the moment, it creates frustration. And this is one of the reasons why we were talking about the concept of letting go of things needed to be a certain way. Now, that's easier said than done for some of us. I could be
Uh-huh.
I could be a bit of a perfectionist, but I learn to not allow it to take over, because what happens is when you start to get into these frustration modes, you feel like you're rushing, you start to develop these feelings of worry, maybe anger. And then what happens when you're in that energy? How do you start to relate and talk and communicate with other people?
Maybe other people don't want to talk to you at that moment.
Because your whole energy shifts, and it's almost as if what you're starting to attract you're pushing away, and you create
Mm-hmm.
more issues in your life because of that. But haven't you ever noticed when you've been in those moments and then you relax, or you're focused on something else, you're not really paying attention to it, and it's like, wow, oh, there it is, or it came to me, I wasn't really thinking about it, and it came so fast because your mind wasn't so concentrated on it.
So when you're trying to force something, when you're trying to manifest something, that doesn't really work. Like it's almost like you have to put it out to the universe, take action on it if it's something you're working towards, but don't try to force the issue, because then it's like you're creating more of a distance between what you want.
Hmm.
So by trying to force something, is like you're creating more resistance, and that gap from you getting closer to it is getting bigger. So when you think about it that way, it's like, remember to take that breath, relax, and just focus on what you want. Don't focus on all the things that are going wrong, because by doing that, you're putting more energy into all the negative things you don't want. In return, you will get more of those negative things. So it's like, always remember to focus on what you want.
Absolutely. And Stephen says, I've had to learn patience. It's not easy, but the stress factor is much lower. Acceptance is the answer to all of my problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we get into those moments sometimes, right? The key thing is, how long do you choose to stay in that moment? And the
Mm-hmm.
learning process is, once you identify that and you're aware, wow, I'm creating resistance. I'm forcing this, and you have this moment to, okay, I'm going to relax. I'm going to take a breath. What can I do now? Because what happens is, at least in my perspective, is we have so many things that we want to achieve and accomplish. And sometimes we have very big goals and very big dreams. And it can seem so overwhelming because there's so much to do. Your mind starts going, how am I going to do this? I gotta bring in these resources. I gotta earn this kind of money. I have to learn these new skills. And it seems like there's too much. And this is where a lot of people just stop and give up altogether, because
Mm-hmm.
it seems too much and they
It's
don't want to go
overwhelming
through that.
for them.
It becomes overwhelming. And it only becomes overwhelming because you're going past a skill set that you're not ready for. You're trying to do too much, and that creates anxiety in the body, and that's where people tend to shut down.
Mm-hmm.
But what you should do is when those moments and when you're trying to attract something or you want things to go in a certain way is just focus on one little aspect at a time. It's like what if it's a goal, what's the one thing that you can do right now that'll move you closer to that goal? Don't think about the 10 things that you have 20 things you have to do and the end result that what's going to happen a year from now, 6 months from now. When you focus on what's the little thing that I need to do today, and when you start doing that, then you're only focused on one thing and not so many, and the overwhelm starts to decrease.
So here's an example when you have a lot to do, like, when you have to clean your house and there's like all these rooms in your house. So if you were to clean up a little bit in one room, go to the next room, clean up a little bit, and kind of bounce around the whole house, picking up a little bit at a time, at the end of the day, you're not going to be done, and it's going to look like you didn't do anything by being scattered all over the place. But if you start in one room and you just focus on that, by the time it's done, then you can move on to the next. And then you'll have, at least that accomplishment of finishing one room versus trying to do all the rooms at once and then nothing ever gets done. But one room at a time, and then you can see your progress, and it's like, whoa, like I did 2 rooms today, or whatever it is, or I did the whole house today. So it's like, stay focused on one thing at a time, what you want to do, because otherwise you get scatterbrained and then nothing gets done.
Nothing gets done. I want to say hello to Valor Dominguez. Hi, Val.
Hi,
Thank you for
Valerie.
joining us here on the show. And again, if you guys are new, put your comments here into the feed. Steven says hello, Valor, but he's kind of talking in the feed here. I'll let that go. So we're talking about this. Let me pull her off the screen just real quick. Thank you guys so much for being here. There's so many things. And I think what happens is when we're doing all these things, and even if we're focused on one thing at a time, is we lose track of the progress that we've made.
Yeah.
And so we're in the beginning, when you're trying to focus on something, it seems like, okay, I got like 20, 40 different things I need to do. When you focus on the one, sometimes the mind can be very easily go think about all the other things and create that overwhelmed feeling. But when you focus just and say to yourself, I'm just going to do this one thing, I'm going to let all that go and just do this. And then over time, and you were just talking about this, you'd be surprised how much you've actually accomplished. And that's where you start to develop the practice of this. And you're just like, oh, that's what they were talking about. Now I get it. Because we can say the information, but to have the experience is a completely different thing, because that's when it sinks into your subconscious mind and you understand more because you've had experience with it.
And maybe you didn't reach your goal, but at least you accomplished some things that is getting you closer to your goal. So it's what I recommend is celebrate all the little accomplishments. So anything that's, say you have a list of things to do, you do one, celebrate that. Otherwise, you're going to feel like, oh, I didn't hit my goal, because you're focusing on that. But if you do one thing and you celebrate it, and you're like, oh, well, I did this today, and at least you're one step closer to your goal, and that puts you in a better mood. It raises your vibration versus focusing on, well, I didn't do all these other things, and lowering your vibration. So the higher you are on your vibration, it gets you closer to your goal, to whatever you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other thing to that is to be mindful of is when you are focusing on that one thing, sometimes it might take you longer than you anticipated to be completed. And that key word is you want to do it until it's completed. However long that's going to take you until you move on to that next task. And, because sometimes when you're doing something, especially if it's learning a new skill, you have to learn one thing at a time. And sometimes it's not there yet, or you get stuck. You struggle a little bit. And until you learn how to do it, then it becomes easier. And then once you feel comfortable, once you feel like, okay, I've got the lesson here, I've completed this task, move on to the next one. And it's sometimes it could be frustrating, right? It can be frustrating if things don't go exactly the way you want them to. But sometimes, as Veronica mentioned earlier, was sometimes they even turn out even better than you planned out. And so when we talk about forcing things to happen, is if we expect it to be exactly a certain way, then what's going to happen? You're just going to create all kinds of inner turmoil within you. You know, when you're in frustration, you're upset, or you're worried about something, it's like you're really affecting your whole body. Your
It's
body
chemistry.
is the emotional filter. You can decrease your immune system. You can get sick, and this is not the really good time to be able to do that right now. Is we want to be as healthy and strong as we can so we can move forward. But that just throws off your whole entire system. You don't sleep very well at night. You can break yourself down, but then
Mm-hmm.
also, what's the energy you're putting out to the universe, to other people? Is you start to create other issues that it's like the ripple effect. So the more that you can stay calm and centered and focus, then you'll find that things just tend to flow the way they are and they flow naturally.
So last night, my daughter wanted to eat out, and I was working on a cake, and um, she's like, "Oh, can we eat out tonight?" And I'm like, "Well, we'll see." I was gonna make dinner, and she's like, "Can we have Panda Express?" And she did it like,
It's one of her favorite places.
yeah, and I'm like, "Well, I was gonna make dinner, but I wasn't really planning on going." I said, we'll see. And then all of a sudden, she just put it out there. She told me, but she didn't keep asking. She didn't keep forcing to like, come on, mom, can we go? Can we go? So what have you ever had an encounter with a child when they keep asking and asking and asking and then you get frustrated because they keep asking so much? And, or people like they keep asking you or telling you to do something. But she didn't do that. And she just let it go, put it out there. And then all of a sudden, I get a text message for a client wanting a cake like now, like today. And then I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't have anything that's already done. And he's like, I forgot my girlfriend's birthday.
Oh
Can you
god.
help me? I'm like, oh my
This is
gosh.
like at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, by the
6 o'clock, and so I did remember that I did have a pre-made cake that I was gonna give to someone, which it was baked already, and all I needed to do was make frosting. So I'm like, well, I have a cake. I can just make some frosting and get it ready. He's like, how long do you think it'll take? I'm like, maybe an hour and a half, an hour to an hour and a half. He's like, oh, thank you so much, and he's like, yeah, I'll pay you double. He's like, no, I'll pay you triple for what you charge for that.
way. Paid her triple.
I'm like, okay. So I'm like, Violet, you just manifested Panda Express because now I wasn't gonna have time to make dinner and
We were gonna be out out
prepare.
driving, yeah.
So I was gonna have to drive about 20 minutes out. So I'm like, you manifested, and today I asked her, I'm like, what when you asked me that you wanted Panda Express, what mood were you in or what was going on? She's like, well, I was feeling good. I asked you and I just let it go. I didn't force it. I just told you and I didn't really think about it. So she put it out there and then she wasn't really um, focusing on the lack of it or anything. It was just like, okay, this is what I want.
And
And
if and
feeling good is key.
yeah, and if we were unable to go, not being like upset about it or disappointed,
Mm-hmm.
because again, that brings a different energy.
Yeah.
Val says, it is just about task, or can it be something else? Absolutely, it can be anything.
Anything.
There's tasks, there's things you need to do, there's communication, if you meditation, whatever it is, one thing at a time as you focus on. If you want to be more specific, let us know here into the comments of what you're referring to.
Yeah.
But we talk about this overwhelm of, it's not just your to-do list, it's a lot of things. It's learning new skills. It can be anything, but we have a goal, we have a desire or a dream. A lot of those are the same thing, but this vision that you have in your mind is, you want to see that come to fruition, and depending on the size of the vision or the dream, some things can take longer than others.
Mm-hmm.
And what you need to do is, okay, what's the first thing that I can do today? What can move me forward? Once I completed that, okay, what's the next thing? And you just kind of use that format, and it'll help you to kind of move forward. And then as you go through it, it's good sometimes to just take a look backwards and see, okay, how much progress have I made?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, even if you haven't reached your goal, look how much growth has happened
Yeah.
in the meantime.
Yeah, because I think people will focus on like not having something, but then they don't see everything else that they've done or accomplished, and they should really pat themselves on the back for everything that they've done because sometimes things don't happen right away, and depending on what it is, it might take a little longer. So that's where patience come in, like Stephen was saying earlier. You need to have patience. Otherwise, if you don't, you're creating this internal, it's pretty much like a pressure cooker with like frustration, anger, all those negative emotions, and you're lowering your vibration. So you're creating a bigger gap between your goal or something that you want, whatever it is. So when you think about it that way, it's like reduce the pressure by relaxing, taking that breath, maybe even meditating. For those of you who never tried meditating, maybe try like a guided meditation, because that will really help the mind. If it's too quiet, sometimes people, they hear too much, or they focus on all the things they have to do. But a guided meditation will really help.
Absolutely. And for those of you who are just joining with us here on the show, whether you're watching live or the replay, we're talking about, forcing things to happen. Are we bringing things into what we want into our life? And if we find that we're getting bothered, upset, frustrated with certain things, like are we trying to force it to happen? And when we start to force things, and think about when someone tries to force you to do anything, how do you feel? Do you feel, oh, sure, I will definitely do that for you? Or do you find a sense of resistance within you because of the energy that brings? And it enforces so many different ways. We were talking about Star Wars before, about using the Force.
That's the Force.
The Force, not using Force. There's a difference, right? It's all by definition and how you're looking at it. But when we learn to relax, and when we talk about in the manifestation mindset, right? It's a mindset. Everything starts from within first. It starts as a thought. There's emotions that are involved, the behaviors and actions that we take, but everything starts in our thoughts. And so when we learn to control our thoughts, or we control our emotions, then we become better creators of our own life.
And our emotions, it really amplifies like that energy behind those thoughts. So when you think about it, if you're working on something and you're angry and you're in that anger state, you're really pushing anger energy into whatever you're doing. So when you're working on a project or whatever it is, take that breath, really center yourself and ground yourself. Otherwise, you're putting the wrong energy into something. So, keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. And Val says, I don't want to get sick and don't like the bad juju.
Yeah, it could definitely get you sick.
You definitely don't want that. So center ourselves. Stephen says, what if I didn't force something? How would that get something done when you're on a time-sensitive issue? So as we mentioned, is sometimes things may not be completed exactly when we want them to. So it's not about a time thing. So there's that. But it's when you're doing it, when you're calmer, you flow better.
Yeah.
But have you ever noticed that when you're rushing and you're forcing things, or it's got to get done, especially when there's timelines due, don't you find that there's more mistakes that happen? One wrong thing seems to happen, and then it's like the time takes longer. You're rushing to work or for an appointment, and you end up hitting like all the red lights. Traffic is slowed down. Think about that. So the energy we are putting out is like creating all these different ripples. And it seems, and then what we focus on, and we seems like things take even longer. But when we're calmer, even if you're running a bit late, is okay. What can you do? Because we've had this lesson before, where we were going to places, we were going to some shows, and shows start at a certain time, and if you don't show up in time, then you miss how many minutes or hours that you were late. But we realize is when we were rushing, and we've done this, and we get out, we're already running a little bit behind, and then there's heavy traffic.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, great. So I can either sit there in traffic and be upset and frustrated and worrying about things, and then what's that doing to me on the inside?
I said, we'll get there when we get there.
And this is what she's telling me in my mind. I'm like, okay, so I'm breathing, I relax. I'm like, okay, there's nothing I could do at this point, right?
Yeah, you can't.
And so I was like, I'm stuck here. We're going slow. I can't ram into the other car and make things go faster. I can't drive on the side. I can't,
because that would be forcing it and create more issues, right?
And I can't be like Moses and part the freeway to get going. But I just know this is what it is. And the best thing that I can do in this moment is to just calm and center myself. And okay, even if we get there late, what do I do next? And
Yeah.
so that's the biggest thing, is how do you respond to those situations?
Yeah, and I've had it before where I'm running a little late with the cake and there's a deadline. And then I take that moment to breathe, and then all of a sudden the person texts me, "Hey, I'm running a little late. Is it okay if you come a little later?" I'm like, "Perfect."
Yeah. And
Yeah.
in those situations, like
Yeah, and it works out.
like we got to the show, right? And like we had tickets at will call already. The usher's like, "Oh yeah, just come on in." And the other thing, we had seen the show before.
So we didn't really, well,
Yeah.
we missed part of it, but it's like we've seen it before, so it
Yeah.
wasn't a
We
big deal.
walked in, they just said, "Come on in." Like there was really not a big issue or being there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to just check with Val here. So Val says, "I'm struggling with patience or lack of it with my autistic grandson. And I feel the bad energy that I'm putting out and not understanding why. Maybe tired?"
Hmm.
Yeah. And so this is very interesting, especially for those parents that have autistic children, because we don't have that in our family, but we know people that
Yeah.
do, and we understand that it's a very big job. And at least the commonalities that I've seen with those parents is a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them do get frustrated. They're tired, they're exhausted, because every day, every minute can be different, right?
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing is, why the lack of patience? What are you trying to accomplish? Because whether if anybody has any children, autistic or not, is if they're not doing things that on your timeline, or they're not doing certain things the way that you want them to, the biggest thing is look at, okay, how do I respond to this? So you have a
Mm-hmm.
couple choices. You can get mad or upset, or you can figure out a better solution and how to communicate with that other person.
Yeah.
Because what happens is you're dealing with other people, and there's conflict in some way, miscommunication. Usually that's what it comes down to, and then we react. You react emotionally, and then what happens? It's like you go to your room, do this, and then there's more bad energy around. Rather than taking a breath, is what's a different way to approach this situation, so that way I don't get frustrated for next time.
And from what I understand, autistic kids are very sensitive. So if you're already feeling frustrated, or if there's already something going on within you, they're sensitive to that, and they could react in a way that maybe you don't even understand why they're reacting in that way. But if they're feeling your energy, they
Hmm.
can be picking up on that and lashing out, or whatever they do. So kids also very
Yeah.
sensitive to energies, and sometimes when kids are misbehaving, or they're acting um, in a not so nice way, it could be that they're picking up on energy of other people around them. So just keep that in mind, that I know that they are very sensitive to that. So,
Yeah.
but communication, I would say, is a big one.
Yeah. She says, "I'm thinking maybe I want him to be okay and don't see it. I believe I need to know how to communicate."
Yeah, I'm sure there's resources out there
Yeah.
that can help you with that, how to communicate with autistic
Yeah.
kids.
And there's different skills to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, what's the first thing that I could do? Maybe it's just I need to learn some better communication skills.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that when you're dealing with other people is, when you learn to control your own emotions and behaviors, because when you react in a certain way, there is a specific reason why you react in that way. And because whatever situation's at hand, there's a meaning to that for you. We all have these triggers that we have because of past
Mm-hmm.
experiences. And what happens is, when we haven't really dealt with our own issues and we haven't healed things from within, then they tend to repeat themselves in patterns in different people, in different situations. And when you learn to heal from the old trauma, then you'll find that those situations don't trigger you as much. He may do the exact same thing tomorrow, but when you've healed yourself, you find that you don't get bothered by it as much.
Yeah,
And then the energy changes.
yeah.
And she says, "So true. So true."
You're
And thank you very much, she says. So you're very
You're
welcome. And I hope
welcome.
that has been helpful for you guys. And, we can go on and on here on our show. The time flies by
It
fast.
does fly by
And
fast.
so, and we are here every week. We're Tuesdays and Thursday. We post a new video. We go live. We're gonna have some interviews that are coming up for you
Mm-hmm.
guys. Hey, we're here on YouTube, and so if you guys have not done so yet, and you want to find all of our videos when we post and we go live, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the channel. turn on that little bell notification icon so you get reminders each time when we have a new video posted, whether live or recorded. We'll have those for you consistently each week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we got some pretty good a good lineup of guests coming up for you guys next week. We'll share
Yeah.
those in the post. And I hope this has been helpful. If you guys found any value out of this, you have any comments or questions, you can put those down here into the feed if you're watching the replay. Love to hear from you guys.
Or share the video with your friends if it's something that's beneficial, so that you feel somebody can hear. Share it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for being here today
Thank you.
on the Manifestation Mindset, and we will see you next time.
All right. Have a great day. Have a great night. Have a great morning.